Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, high scorers. Congratulations on your latest triumph. That, of course, being your excellent choice of podcast. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Way to go, you. Keep up those winning ways. And now, ensuring that you stay a mark above the rest, the coach leading us all to a better future, it's Matthew Dickerson. What have you been up to this week, Matt?
I've actually been involved in a really fascinating project involving telematics. So the data, tracking vehicles, tracking trucks, that type of thing. And this particular project had various carriers across the state. And depending on when that carrier or when that truck was manufactured and when that truck was brought on the road and what it carries, it's now compulsory for many of those vehicles, those trucks, to have telematics data that's tracking where they are at basically all points when they're doing their job.
So hang on, does that act like a speed camera as well? Like a perpetual speed camera?
I thought
we know that you got between this intersection and that intersection faster than you possibly could have if you were sticking to the speed limit.
I actually thought exactly that. Now, I was told, no, we're not using it for that today.
Today, yeah, okay.
There's every possibility it could be used for that tomorrow. But it's more just to track these vehicles and actually just look at the roads and how the roads are being used. The project that I was involved with was actually looking at some congestion points across the state. And the first part of it was actually really easy to see the congestion points because you've got this anonymous data. You can draw heat maps from this and you know it's incredibly accurate because you've got all the telematics data. You know that there are, if you're estimating there are 57 trucks going through that intersection over this period of time, well, you know that at absolute least there's that. Now, there are some older vehicles. Not every vehicle used in transport across the state has got telematics software and hardware installed at the moment. That's only a matter of time as those vehicles, those older vehicles get replaced and as things move forward, they'll all have telematics information on there. And maybe that's the time when they go, flick, now you're going to start be using that for tracking speeds of various trucks. But I just thought in terms of tracking road usage, remember the old days when they used to put little strips across the road? They were little black strips of rubber.
Like tubes, yeah.
And they were air, as far as I know, they were just air-filled and
counted traffic just by the amount of pulses of air.
Yeah, exactly right. I used to ride over on my bike and just go, was I heavy enough to count that? Did I just count that? Are they going to go and look at all this road traffic data and go, we need to improve that, but there's only all these push bikes going over it. So I don't know how heavy it needs to be. I hope it's heavier than a push bike. But that was the old days, and there was a counter installed on the side of the road and they'd have it there for a week or a month or whatever time it was. But now they don't need to do that. And I've actually noticed a lot fewer of those on the roads, and I didn't really think about it until I got involved in this project. And I went, that's probably why I don't see so many now. Now, it's not all vehicles, so you're not counting all the cars. So if you were trying to count cars, you might still need some of those little tubes across the road. But I just thought the amount of information, and that's the real challenge, isn't it? We are gathering so much information about so many different things. Yeah. The analysis of that information, if we know there are too many trucks going through this intersection at this particular point in time, what's that mean? What do we do about it? Is there a solution, or is it just, wow, that's bad, and then we move on? It's always difficult.
Yeah, look, one thing to gather the data, it's another thing to have to process it, and then another thing to have to analyse it.
Yeah, and then the last one, the big scary one, was to solve the problem. And that's this project I was involved with. The solution to the problem was $3.9 billion. So I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but at least there's a long-term solution there. Quite fascinating.
Goodness me. Okay, folks. Let's skim through the playlist for this week. I see that we have a story for the high-tech hippies out there because we're getting into communal solar farms. There's some, hippie commune living for you. And as much as we hate to drone on, we are as high as a kite over Zipline's recent delivery milestone. And it looks like Chinese scientists have seen the light and are doing away with noisy propellers for their submarines. Wait until you hear how they're moving forward there, folks. But let's get rolling with a clever little development in the e-scooter market. Don't be alarmed, folks, but if you're working away quietly, minding your own business on a daily basis, and you see a riderless e-scooter zipping past your front window, don't call Ghostbusters just yet. The e-scooter industry is set for an upgrade as developers investigate the potential for autonomous scootering. Matt, riderless homing scooters. This is going to raise eyebrows and turn heads.
Well, you know what I thought of? I thought of the old animated feature film that Walt Disney put out in 1940 called Fantasia.
Yeah.
And there's that
With the
scene.
brooms.
The brooms, that's right. I
And
think
the
it was
buckets.
called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse comes along and thinks, I don't need to do this work, gathering a bit of water. I'll get the broom and the sorcerer's hat and I'll make it all happen. And, of course, he does that. And then he wants to stop it, so he chops up the broom. And, of course, all the brooms turn into other brooms. And then he's invaded with multiple brooms carrying multiple buckets of water until the sorcerer comes along and solves the problem. And not that I think that's going to happen. We're going to get multiple e-scooters. But I do think you're walking home from the pub. You've had a late night out. You're walking home 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You've had a couple of drinks. And then you see a riderless e-scooter, exactly as you said. Do I call Ghostbusters? Is there someone riding that and they're invisible? They've got an invisibility cloak on. What's going on? And then you see a line of them because ideally what would happen is you'd see all of these e-scooters going back to a charging point. So you're walking along the footpath and you see this line of e-scooters going past with no one on them and you'd start going, wow, I've really got to give up drinking. That's it. I swear off from tomorrow. So the idea here is that in the middle of the night, there are people now, contractors that are paid to go out and collect e-scooters and charge them up because people have said to me, how do they get charged? Do they charge themselves? Well, of course they don't charge themselves. Someone has to physically go and do it, but you don't know about it because it's happening in the middle of the night.
So I assume these people got trackers on them so they can locate these e-scooters, yeah?
Correct, yeah. You've got...
Because we were in Melbourne the other day and noticed all these e-bikes sort of just dotted around the town. They just parked out on the street there and, just waiting for the next person, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And so e-scooters, for some reason, seem to be more controversial than e-bikes. E-bikes seem to be accepted because maybe we all ride push bikes and maybe we don't ride scooters so much, but e-scooters are a bit more controversial. But in the middle of the night, in any place that have got them, someone goes around, collects them, charges them up, and then they go back and put them at various locations. Now, the idea is you want them spread around because you want to be able to go from A to B. You don't want to always go from a certain point.
You don't, have to go into a station to pick up an e-scooter and then go and, that's
so they naturally get distributed while people are using them, but then obviously they go back to certain locations. There's a fair bit of work and all that, and I like them for the novelty value. If I lived somewhere that had e-scooters, would I use them to commute to work? Probably not, but that's what they're trying to get to, that last mile. You catch the train to work, and then it's still, I've still got to walk a couple of kilometres to work now, or I catch a bus to a certain spot, it's not quite the right spot, so I catch a bus and a train. So that's the whole idea from a micro-mobility perspective. But to do that, you need to make them convenient and make them always charged up and make them at locations you want them. So the whole idea of this, and they're doing testing at the moment around the University of Stuttgart, where they're using the campus as their test site. It's a known environment. They know it's a fairly small environment. They know where they can go from A to B, and that all makes it pretty easy. But they're actually quite fascinating when I watch them. They've got, I thought of a Segway. So a Segway is quite clever in that you've got 2 wheels side by side, and then it can adjust how it balances forwards and back, if you like. But an e-scooter is a bit different because I started thinking, well, how are they going to make an e-scooter balance as it goes along? Does it have a training wheel that pops out to the side and go along? I thought, well, that wouldn't work because they might be too wide then to get through some locations. It's actually got a large circular unit that mounts at the base of the handlebar stem, just above where you would stand. And that actually rotates back or forth to actually balance the e-scooter as it rides along. So I thought it was quite cool. It looked like it was very stable. Very clever, yep. It looked like it was very stable. So the idea here is middle of the night, they need to be charged up. Don't worry about a contractor going and picking them up. They'll go back to a charging point automatically. They'll get charged up, and because they've got so much data, we talked about data before, because they've got so much data, they know where they're needing to be used. So if it's a train station they need to be used at, make sure you've got 30 at the train station ready at 7 o'clock in the morning when people arrive on the train. At lunchtime, we know that they're always going down to this particular cafe. Make sure you go out to the CBD and have 30 sitting at one spot there, so they can actually move around autonomously to where they're going to be used. Now, that's not yet. This is all testing at the moment.
But it's a great idea.
It's a great concept.
If they can pull it off.
If they can pull it off.
That'll be amazing.
And the other thing is being able to pop them up, because some people are a little bit selfish and they knock one over and they don't pick it up, or they just drop it on the ground afterwards. So the idea here is, and I didn't see any of this yet, but the idea will be some sort of little lever that does pop up on the side.
Self-righting.
Self-righting, exactly right. So there are some people who still are big fans of e-scooters, but I think they're going to be a good solution. You'll see a video where some poor little old person is walking along the footpath, or walks out of a shop on the footpath, and the e-scooter knocks them over, and everyone says ban e-scooters. But you see push bikes running into people, you see cars running into people. We don't say ban all cars. We say, how do we make the roads safer? The solution for some people with e-scooters is to only allow them on roads, not allow them on footpaths. But, of course, on roads there's cars. So if I'm riding an e-scooter personally, I'd rather be on the footpath.
Yeah.
But I can understand the person walking on the footpath mightn't want them on the footpath as well.
Yeah.
I think they're a good solution. And this sort of thing will just make it easier for those various companies that are putting them out there to make them a viable solution.
And I think as they become more normal, they become more accepted, yeah?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. So, anyway, quite fascinating. But I do look forward to being walking along the footpath one day and just seeing an e-scooter go past with no one going.
Well, I wonder if that means maybe you can book an e-scooter to show up at your doorstep and just have this thing just sort of autonomously for 7:30.
Yep.
There's your pickup.
Hadn't thought of that idea, but that's an even better idea. So it's all charged, all ready to go. We know where they're used generally, but also James needs to leave his house at 7:30. It'll be out the front of your place at 7:30.
Thank you very much.
So I like that. That's an even better idea. University of Stuttgart, tune in and make sure you've heard that idea as well.
All right, folks, this next story is sure to get people's hackles up. How young is too young to have a smartphone? Well, let's rephrase that. Take a guess at what sort of percentage of 5-year-olds in the UK have their own smartphone, and then add a bit. Quite a bit. Matt, no judgment here, but what are the stats over there on kids with smartphones, and what are the implications?
Now, I like to think of myself as a good parent, James, so I actually thought about my kids, and my kids might have phones earlier than other kids because, well, I'm in technology, I own a mobile phone shop, so maybe they had them really young, but it was a tough job, but I held off to late primary school, and it seemed to be almost acceptable that most kids, when they get to high school, they're probably getting a phone by the time they get to high school.
Yeah.
So my kids
And that's where we're at. We're sort of early high school.
Yeah. So by the time you get to high school, you're 13 or ish. And then, so I think our kids got them about year 5, maybe year 6. I think I tried to hold off to year 6. So about 11 or 12 years of age before they got a phone. So maybe I felt like I was a bit irresponsible at the time, but the impending wave of association with phones and everything we used to do with technology, it got to the stage where we did that.
But responsibility can be taught as well. I mean,
true.
The kids make mistakes, and I get that, but responsibility is a teachable thing.
Yeah, so, and maybe that's the case here, but they surveyed 5 to 7-year-olds. Now, the first question I have is, how do you survey 5 to 7-year-olds? Do you send them a message on their smartphone? Well, maybe that'll work. Might be slightly biased in the results. But I don't know how they surveyed 5 to 7-year-olds. But this company does an annual study of smartphone and technology usage with kids. So they surveyed 5 to 7-year-olds. And exactly as you said in the intro, have a guess of a number of how many 5 to 7-year-olds own a smartphone, because my guess would have been 0. Because I'm thinking, why does a 5-year-old need a smartphone? Even I find it annoying when you're sitting there having dinner with some friends and they hand over their smartphone to their 5-year-old and going, don't hand over your smartphone. That's got a lot of information on there. The kids can accidentally make a mistake or send messages to people. Yeah. Anyway, 25%. That's 25%. That's a quarter of kids in the UK aged 5 to 7 own a smartphone. Well, their parents probably own it because they can't take out a contract at the age of 5 to 7. You've got to be 18 to sign a contract.
But they have their own,
They own a smartphone that's given to them presumably by their parents. Now, that's scary. But then when you start to drill down in what they're doing with it, 40% of them have WhatsApp, 50% of them have a social media app of some description. Now, keep in mind that most social media apps have a minimum age.
Minimum age on it.
Yeah, 13 is the typical minimum age. Yeah. So, and I did actually have that recently. There was I saw a thing come through on social media and it said this person was 30 years of age. And I knew this person. And I was talking to them not long after that and I went, I thought you were only mid-20s. I didn't realise you were that old. They went, no. Years ago, when I wanted to get on social media, I had to say that my age was 13 when I was younger than 13. So it put my age up a bit and I haven't gotten around to fixing it up. So obviously people lie about their age to be able to be on social media. And there's no check there. If you were registering for something as an adult, it would be show us your passport, show us your driver's license. They figure most 13-year-olds don't have necessarily proof of ID, so they just accept if that's your date of birth, that's your date of birth, end of story.
Well, I just didn't trust social media with my important stats, so I just faked my birthday for it anyway.
Good.
Yeah,
people
so
do that.
at least if they want to steal my identity, they're going to get the wrong birthday.
Good work.
And I'm a different James Eddy.
And it's not a bad tactic either. I have seen that as well, where I know someone's birthday and I'll see it pop up, wish so-and-so happy birthday. I've gone, oh, hold on.
Hang on a second.
I thought he was
There in March.
Yeah, that's right. So that's pretty scary to see how many. And presumably at some stage their parents are seeing them use some of these apps. And if parents are aware of the fact that they've got to have a minimum age, then they obviously are condoning their children lying about their age. So that was interesting. Then some of the increases, and they do this survey on an annual basis, so the increase in messaging services over the last year for that same age group went from 59% of kids using messaging apps to 65%. The social media participation went from 30 to 38%. Now, here's the one that scared me. 40% of children in the 5 to 7 age bracket participate in online gaming. Really? Online gaming. So you're sitting there as a 5-year-old and you're going to get sucked into paying something on those online games.
Yeah, because they're laced with ads.
That's right. So you're going to be there and you're going to either ads or I want to just buy that extra little thing. I want to add that. Mum, can I have your credit card? Yep, sure thing, whatever. And next thing you know, you're running up these huge bills. So that went up from 34% to 40% over the last year. So these are quite alarming, but maybe I'm getting old and fuddy-duddy. So, but the other one that I thought was interesting was that many parents, the majority of parents that were interviewed that related to these children, didn't actually realise there was a minimum age requirement. So only a third said that they were aware there was some minimum age requirement for social media apps. Yeah. Maybe there should be a minimum age requirement for smartphones. But again, you just leave it in your name. How are you going to pick up that your child is using a smartphone if it's in the parent's name? So it's just, I'm blown away by these stats. It's actually quite fascinating.
Well, there are a lot of parents who are kids themselves, really, in a lot of ways too. So we're assuming that all parents are, well educated about these sorts of things. But
yeah. Maybe not so much. Maybe some of the kids are using it without their parents knowing about it. And
potentially.
Just sign up there. But a smartphone. It's pretty hard for a kid to get hold of a smartphone without their parents realising what's going on. Because, again,
there's an enormous level of naivety here.
Well, possibly, yeah. But when the parent has to buy one or has to go and sign up a contract for one for their child, surely there's somewhere they go, is this the right thing for my 5-year-old? And maybe I'm completely wrong. And maybe for the brain development of a 5-year-old, being a smartphone user is the most important thing, but at this stage, we don't have that data to show that. So, anyway, quite fascinating information.
Very fascinating. With climate change being what it is, a number of ski resorts in a variety of countries around the planet have been noting some concerning changes to their key source of income. While there are still people out there who want to argue that changing climatic conditions are all a media beat-up, it's got to be hard to convince ski resort communities otherwise when they relied on broad, deep, long-lasting snowfields for their livelihood. And they're not just collecting. Matt, what sort of Plan B tech-based options are there for ski resorts to turn to?
Now, you're not going to believe me when I say this, James, but why don't you just store the snow over summer and then use it again next winter? Surely that's an obvious solution.
Put it in a box and keep it under the mantle? I don't know.
As a kid, I was fascinated by ice. And I used to take ice and put it in my glass next to the bed at night with a bit of water in there. And I wanted to know what happened with that ice by the morning and see what the water changed. And, of course, as you know, ice expands. So the water expands there. So my water will drop down. I've gone, well, where's the ice gone? So I don't know why, but it was a fascinating thing I found with ice. So it didn't store long. It didn't stay very cold overnight.
No.
And with snow, you think the same. But that's exactly what ski resorts are doing. They're storing snow over summer to use it again next winter.
But where do you put it? Like, I haven't got a back room that, I'll just pack all that snow into there.
I'll put it in the fridge, obviously. That's the obvious solution. They're actually using just various plant moving or earth moving equipment to put the snow into a nice pile, cover it with some nice polystyrene that's as good as possible to keep the heat out, and leave it there. They come back next winter or after the summer, and 80 to 90% of that snow is still there, ready to use.
Stop.
And then
is it packed into ice? Is it packed down?
Well, I imagine I couldn't find any photos of it.
Have you got to grind it up again and turn it back into snow?
Well, I didn't get the impression they did that. I got the impression that what they did was they basically took it all in a pile. So you can imagine at the very bottom of that, it's still going to be pretty cold. Yeah. So you're relying on some of the ice to insulate some of the ice, if you understand what I mean. So they pack it up there, and then I think by the time they spread it out, it mightn't be great skiing because it might be more like ice than snow initially, but they might all then do some artificial snow over the top. So you don't have to build up from the ground level. You might go, I've already got some snow there, some ice, and then put some snow over the top. But it's a real thing that people are doing, that these various ski resorts are doing. Now,
whereabouts are they doing this?
Over in Finland is one of the places they're doing it. So you're taking places now. One I found in Finland said they monitor the temperature as they go through the summer, and they found that deep down in the snow, the temperature sat around about 2.5 degrees Celsius, despite the outside temperature outside the polystyrene was sitting at 44 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
So it's obviously doing a good job.
That's a hot summer too.
It is a hot summer, but remember, temperature is always taken to the shade. So this is out in the sun, so it's 44 degrees there. But they stored, in this example, 30,000 cubic metres of snow. Now, of course, who measures things in cubic metres? We know that everyone measures volume in swimming pools. That's right. So if you take a swimming pool, I guess 50 by 25 by maybe 2 metres, so say 2,500 cubic metres. So that's about 12 swimming pools.
That's
so they took 12 swimming pools
just there.
Took some 12 swimming pools worth of snow. And from that, they said, we'll put that there. And again, that's at the end of the summer. They got to about 80 to 90% of that still there. So it's happening more and more. Yet they're finding that various competitions, various snow-based competitions are not necessarily able to be run in the normal season because they're relying on a certain length of season. So again, they're looking at storing snow for that. Whole range of areas they're storing snow for. I mean, it might get to the stage where you go and visit some snowfields and you say, hey, James, bring me back a glass of snow, will you? So that type of thing. But again, it's not something you think is logical, but if you store it in enough volume, you're able to keep it cold long enough to get you through the summer and then use it again next winter.
That's an amazing solution to a big problem that I just would never have thought.
Never have thought of. Apparently there's some...
Well, I mean, artificial snow has been a thing for a while. So, they blast that artificial snow out there. But, I don't know, for the purists, whether or not the quality of artificial snow is as good.
No, possibly not. But even with artificial snow, there's a huge amount of power required to produce artificial snow. And that's why they're looking at this as a much friendlier option because it doesn't take a lot of work to push all that snow together in a pile as such compared to producing all that snow from water in the first instance. So, quite fascinating.
Do you remember fuel prices at 80 cents per litre? You must be so old if you do. Remember the horror then when it hit $1? We're all screaming blue murder, as I remember. Well, with fuel prices now commonly above the $2 mark and not looking as though there'll be any reprieve soon, it's no wonder that Google Maps is now offering routes that are the cheapest and not necessarily the fastest. Matt, in the spirit of slow and steady wins the race, thank you, Google.
I don't actually know the differences here, but they've got this whole concept where, you look up Google, you can see the fastest way or the shortest way, and you can understand there that sometimes the shortest way may not always be the fastest because the road you might be on might be a 60k an hour road and this other road's a freeway or whatever it might be.
Or there could be heavy traffic, anything like that,
Yeah, and so they've now got this concept where they'll say, here is the road you can use if you want to use the least amount of petrol or the least amount of electricity in an EV example. Now, I would have thought that would have been pretty much the same. I would have thought if it's more fuel efficient from a petrol perspective, it'd be more fuel efficient from an EV perspective, but maybe lots of stop-start might be okay in an EV, but stop-start in a petrol car probably uses a bit more, so maybe there's a subtle enough difference there. But you'd kind of think if you just look at Google Maps, the shortest route would typically be the least amount of fuel.
The algorithm that must be passing through that app there is phenomenal.
Yeah, it must be, or they're just making it look good. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. They're saying that this is the cheapest route, but who's going to test them?
That's right. It's pretty hard to go and test this. Apple did.
There's the cynic coming out. Right.
Apple actually did something back in 2022 where they added EV charging stations to their maps, and so that kind of was a bit of a nod to we should look at things a bit differently. This is going a step further to try and get to the stage where it's cheaper now or less fuel that you're going to use. Now, it's pretty hard for it to do all this, a fair bit of analysis, us, we hope. So far they're rolling out across 15 cities, places like Amsterdam, places like London. So I think places like Sydney and Melbourne as well. But they're also doing suggestions around public transport and walking. So, for example, if you punch in A to B in Sydney at the moment and you're going to drive that, it also says, oh, do you know you can get public transport and that'll be a little bit quicker? Or you could walk from here to there and that'll be a little bit quicker or a reasonable time frame. So trying to get you to think about other ways of using transport, not just getting in your car and driving. And I actually think the biggest problem at the moment is not so much the driving in places like Sydney and Melbourne, it's the parking. Yeah. Trying to find somewhere to park, trying to find somewhere in the park that doesn't cost you more than the car's worth for a start. It does seem incredibly expensive to use a car.
We're in Melbourne, we found a car park, but we've got had a big Kia Carnival and just trying to negotiate the tiny little alleyway and the sharp corners, this tiny little car park to try and fit our big lug of a car in there was ridiculous.
It's not made for people movers sometimes.
No.
So it's interesting that we are getting to that point where we're just looking at different ways of transporting ourselves around and looking at different things. We thought in the past it was just the quickest way or the shortest way, but now looking at the most fuel efficient way, again with a nod to the expensive fuel and maybe even with electricity, trying to use less electricity. If this all works, then maybe this is another way Google could contribute to global warming, contribute to
more efficient future.
Yeah, more efficient future. Anyway, keep an eye out for it. Have a look on Google Maps next time you use it.
Fantastic. One innovative farmer in the far west of New South Wales has become something of a ray of sunshine to the people of her community. By repurposing one of her paddocks, she's dropped the power bill for everyone in the community. Matt, not everyone can afford to put solar cells on their roof, but making contributions to a communal solar station makes a lot of sense.
A communal solar garden, a
Sounds very
community
hippie.
garden. It does sound a bit hippie, with no disrespect to hippies out there, of course.
No, absolutely.
With the greatest respect to hippies out there. The idea here is that rooftop solar is fantastic. We lead the world, and I'm not sure if we're still number one, but we were number one in rooftop solar in terms of per capita. Fantastic. Well done, Australia. You've really grabbed onto the concept. We've got a slight advantage that we've got a fair bit of sun as well and not too much cloud to get in our way. But the problem is for renters. So if I'm a renter somewhere, I say to my landlord, I'd like to put some solar panels on my roof. And the landlord says, well, I'm not going to pay for them because, well, there's no advantage to me as a landlord because the advantage is to you with your electricity bill for the person renting. The person renting says, well, I'm not going to pay for them because I might move out next year and then you've got these solar panels on the roof. So you typically find that rental properties don't end up with solar panels on the top. Even though renters might want to do it, I can understand their logic that they don't necessarily want to pay for something for the landlord. And the other part, of course, is people that live in apartment blocks, in high-rise, not a lot of surface area to put some solar panels on. So you're exactly right. Someone in Grong in New South Wales decided that they could put a 1.5
It's not far from Ardlethan for those people with their maps out right now.
Well, I just go and look up Grong, so because I don't know where Grong is. So it's not
in between Ardlethan and Narrandera, I think.
Yeah, right, down south there.
Yeah.
Okay, right, yeah. So it's not someone pronouncing Wollongong.
No. You're on the right track.
Yeah, right. So they've built a 1.5 megawatt solar farm there, which is not huge in the scheme of things, but it's a decent size. And they basically allow you to buy a solar plot, a 3 kilowatt solar plot for $4,200. And from that, you'll get $505 return for the first 5 years. And then after that, you'll get $455 return for annually, they say, for up to the next 5 years. So basically for the first 10 years, you're guaranteed the return on that. So $4,200, $505 return, well, that's better return than I get when I put money in the bank, and I feel like I'm doing something good as well. Now, you don't get it in cold hard cash, you get it off your electricity bill. So it's directly the same as the person who would be renting a home. It's basically going straight off the electricity bill, not renting, owning their home with solar panels. You'd get it off your electricity bill, which is effectively how it typically works with solar panels. So that all seems to make sense. So far, they've sold 170 of the lots, and again, at 3 kilowatts per solar farm and 1.5 megawatts, you've got 500 units they can sell there. So 170 have taken up the offer. So I'm sure if people go and Google it and research it and want to buy in, I'm sure there's more opportunity for them to go and buy in there. But again, it does seem to make sense, doesn't it? It's giving people the opportunity. There's some land available here. Yeah. That farmer says it's good for them because it gives them some off-farm income, because obviously they're getting paid something to host these solar panels. Off-farm income when there's drought, when there's times when prices aren't great, whatever it might be, they've got that off-farm income to help them with their farm, but they're also doing something good in the community, and people that can't get solar panels otherwise can feel like they're making a contribution as well. So I thought it was quite a good idea. Go and have a look at it. The farmer's name is Gemma Purcell, and again in Grong, G-R-O-N-G, Grong.
Gemma. Online dating sites can be somewhat of a minefield for those who are genuine in their quest to find a meaningful partner. A jungle full of predators, and you enter at your own peril. For the better part, service providers have seemingly been happy to sit back and watch the fireworks happen. Until now, Matt. It seems that the brains behind Tinder have developed a social conscience at last.
You don't sound like you're running an ad there for Tinder, do you?
Well, it's a step forward, I think. But I know there are people that are looking for love, but have avoided Tinder and gone for some other options because it's a jungle. I'm
completely out of touch, I must admit. I'm just about to hit 30 years of marriage, so I've been, when I was dating, Tinder wasn't a thing, and dating apps weren't a thing, so I still can't even remember whether I meant to swipe left or right when people talk about, swipe left on that. Is that good or bad swiping left? I can never remember because I'm not involved in it. But
we feel like Luddites here, you and me both. But,
I do with dating apps, I must admit. And obviously, I'm never going to just go and play with it and try. It doesn't look good for your wife to go, I'm just trying it, darling, just to see what it does.
What happens.
Yeah, that's right. So it's quite interesting in terms of that being a normal way for people to date now, which is fine. That's quite acceptable. 51% of Tinder users under 30 tell friends where they're going on a date, tell the details of a date. Okay, that makes sense. 19% of users who use Tinder share details of a date with their mum. Isn't that nice? They still tell their mum. 1 in 5 people still say, Mum, I'm going on a date tonight. That's right. Well, you're sure you should be doing that, James. Last week you went out with someone different. So they're obviously not getting judged by their mum, but obviously people are doing it from a safety perspective. So Tinder have said, you know what, it's happening already. Why don't we just make it easier for people to do what they're already doing? So they've now added a share my date feature. So essentially you set up a bunch of people, presumably your mum might be one of those, some friends, some family, maybe
hopefully
not too many.
Not your wife.
Not your wife,
right?
That's right.
Okay.
Leave her off there. So you put some people in your list of people you want to share the information with. You decide to go on a date with someone and you then say, share my date. Now what that does is sends the location, the time, the date of the date. It also sends a photo and the profile of the person you're going on the date with. So pretty much those other people have got every detail.
And they can start judging you right from the word go.
That's right. They can do it immediately, not wait till after the date. The idea would be, presumably, when someone says, do you want to get in the boot of my car while I hold this weapon to your neck or something? Then you can say, well, sure, but by the way, these other 5 people all know exactly who I'm having a date with and exactly where I am. So sure, maybe get in the boot of your car, but they'll all know where you are and they'll follow you. And so maybe that would be a safety thing. So hopefully that doesn't happen to people, but I'm sure there are examples where something like that has happened. So they've said, let's make it a bit safer for people. And that might make people a bit more likely to use their app, which is obviously what they're after ultimately, for people to use their app, so that people feel a bit more confident there. This is going to start rolling out in different countries to begin with. It'll be rolled out over the next few months. And I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. The first countries it's rolling out into are the US, the UK and Australia, are 3 of the first countries. So is that good that it's coming to Australia early, or does that mean they've had lots of bad examples in Australia, so they need to get in Australia as soon as possible?
It's most dangerous in those countries.
That's right. The next bunch of countries will be Canada, Singapore, India, and then Germany, France, Spain, Switzerland, and other countries across Europe last, so maybe it's safer there. So anyway, it's happening. You'll see it pop up there at some point in time. If you use Tinder, have a look at it. And I'd be interested to hear some feedback from people who do use Tinder, whether or not that actually seems to be a good feature.
For those of you who thought that drone deliveries would never take off, pardon the pun, you might need to explain your reasons to the company that just celebrated a major milestone in deliveries. And bear in mind that drone deliveries are still a very new concept, folks. Matt, it seems quite like a novelty idea to me, but at least in some areas, drone delivery has become quite normal.
It's becoming normal-ish, isn't it? We're not seeing it everywhere.
We don't see it out where we are.
No.
But what the big milestone?
Yeah, it's a big milestone. So Zipline has just delivered its 1 millionth package. It's 1 million deliveries. That's a lot.
Now, I think we only started talking about this like a couple of years ago, so
Exactly right.
It's a pretty new sort of a concept.
They haven't been going for long. They actually said most of those deliveries, the majority, have been in the last 2 years. So they did some little test flights initially and did some test deliveries, and then they went, no, it seems to be working. Let's ramp this up. So over that time, they've flown 112 million kilometres across 4 separate continents. They've delivered to hospitals. They've delivered for Walmart. They've basically delivered a whole range of different products. In fact, 10 million different products to date. The 1 millionth delivery was 2 bags of IV fluid in Ghana. So they seem to have specialised a little bit in healthcare. They do food deliveries as well, and commerce where people need it now-ish rather than it's okay to wait a few days for it. The aim for this company is to get to the stage where they can do 1 million deliveries, not over a few years. 1 million deliveries per day is their target.
Wow.
That seems like a lot.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, I think, it's got to be achievable.
Yeah, that's right. They say, this is, again, Zipline saying this, so don't hold me to this, that they can deliver things 10 times faster than traditional methods and also cheaper than traditional methods.
They're not worried about traffic.
Not worried about traffic, and also not worried about a driver sitting there in traffic waiting to get from A to B.
Well, I think about, in getting radioisotopes to the airport to then be delivered to country centres that are looking to, use those radioisotopes in either diagnostics or in treatment, you're working with a very small amount of time. So we have one place that makes those here in Australia, out at Lucas Heights, and then they've got to get those to the airport. And they've got to do that with traffic in mind.
Yeah, that's right. And on a tight time frame because
these things are undergoing their half-life, they're radioactively decaying, and they don't care about traffic.
That's right. So it's things like that. But even you can just imagine you have an accident, a major accident.
Yeah.
You need blood getting to the hospital.
Bingo.
Some hospitals
so many
got more
reasons
blood.
why you don't want to be held up at the traffic lights.
Yeah. And food as well. If I want my cappuccino right now, well, why do I want to wait for someone to go and deliver it to me?
Yes, a real emergency.
That's right. Yeah. Forget about those ones with blood and with.
I'm there before that first coffee.
That's right. So it sounds quite interesting. The other thing they're doing is expanding how far they can go. And of course, if you can expand how far the drone can go in one direction, so they talk about the fact they believe that they can now triple the distance their drones can go, because you can go in a radius, then you triple your distance, you effectively multiply by almost 10 times how many people you can reach by that. So getting the distance. So you're not going to be able to get a drone to deliver hundreds of kilometres. They're not designed for that. It really is getting around cities for those deliveries where you're sitting in traffic doing 10, 20 kilometres an hour, and there goes a drone over the top of you. It might only do 40, 50 kilometres an hour, but it can go in a straight line and not stop at traffic lights, and away you go. They're working already on the aerial highways, as you know, from jets that are flying. You're talking about jets from country to country that are flying. You've got the odd numbers for them to fly in one direction, so say 30,000 feet, 32,000, 34,000. They're even numbers, not odd numbers. Right. But you've got even numbers, 30, 32. And then in the other direction, you're flying the odd numbers, 31, 33, 35. So you've always got at least 1,000 feet, and talking good old-fashioned feet, because that's what the air industry seems to talk in. But that
if we're going to use swimming pools in one story, we might as well use feet.
Why not?
And inches in another,
So that makes sense. And that was a standard that was adopted, I don't know, a long time ago for travel, so that you're very unlikely to have a head-on collision between two planes because you've got 1,000 feet of separation there. It still does happen, but the logic is there. They're working on the same logic with drones, because at the moment, sure, you see a drone, it's a bit of a one-off, but once our skies around busy cities get full of drones, you want to make sure you've got some reason you don't get a cappuccino landing on your head. You want to make sure those drones are flying at different heights.
Raining cappuccino.
That's right. And they're working through all those regulations now as we speak.
Sometimes you can get a win. If that was someone's pizza, free pizza.
Tell that story
wear that
at
on my
the
head.
pub. Last night I was walking over the pub and I just had pizza come out of the sky.
It landed on my head.
So that's one company, Zipline. There are many companies working on this. Amazon, of course, are working on this. Google's working on that. They've got their Wing, I think their project is called. Or Alphabet, to be technically correct there. So there's a lot of companies working on this, but the fact that you've got 1 million deliveries from one company already, it's happening. Those people that don't think it's happening, those people who said, get ready for it. It was pie in the sky,
Chittabum.
or pizza in the sky. Then I think those people are going to be looking at it now, going, "Yep, I can hardly wait to order my next bit of food or whatever it might be."
Fantastic.
Via drone.
There you go. Are you one who tends to play computer games with your whole face? I mean, in the deepest depths of your gaming focus, folks, it's one thing to concentrate with your tongue out, but are you a wincer and a face scruncher, a grimacer and a pouter? If you answered yes to any of this, then this next piece of tech is not for you. Touchless game tech is not necessarily new, but this tech is bringing access to gamers of all abilities. And who needs a joystick when you can just use your face? Talk us through this new age game controller, Matt.
And of course, it's not just games. You can imagine once they master games and the fine control you might need for games, then why not play anything? Why not get the stage where you can
just
control?
Do all your controlling through your face.
Yeah, now.
Get used to winking and nodding.
That's right, and a whole range of things. They used 4 students. They used 200 students over 4 years. So a lot of work's been put into this at the University College in London to get to the point where they were training their AI tools to recognise different things in the face and make things happen from there. So you can work out different features, different options, or you can just go with the standard one. So, for example, you pull a fish face, that might be a right click. Raise your eyebrows could be a double click. So it could be as subtle as that. And that's what we're talking about here. So, again, you'd want to be careful of controlling your emotions while you're playing a game, because something happened and you frown vigorously, and that might be then doing something else you didn't want to do.
Like, my wife once videoed us, myself and my 2 brothers, playing Call of Duty once. And that was ridiculous. It was entertainment in itself, just watching us play the game.
I've got to look forward to that video. So the whole idea is to make gaming available to everyone. So people that have had accidents that might not have control over their arms, might not have fine motor control over their hands, for example, why can't they play games? Well, sure, they should be able to, but the project is bigger than that. Because once you get to the stage where they're able to play games with your face, and there's a lot of action happening with games, then why can't you just use a normal mouse? Why can't you move around and use a spreadsheet? Why can't you just do your normal day's work just by the expressions in your face? Now, I know we've talked before about Neuralink and about thinking about things, playing chess by thinking about moving left, moving right. That's still a long way away, and we're talking about...
It's also intrusive.
Well, Neuralink is, and it's talking about other ones we've discussed where you might just try and read brainwaves like they do with mice to try and think about or read what you're thinking about and then make actions on that. But this one seems a bit more accessible, a bit more something that people might accept, just watching your face, having a camera on your face, and then just training what it is. So working out whether it's the raise of the eyebrows, it's the right wink or the left wink or whatever it might be. I can't wiggle my ears, but some people can. Maybe that's enough to do something subtle. All things. It just seems like people are thinking of things, and some of the
maybe wiggling your ears, and I can do it, unlocks a special feature on the game.
Oh, yeah, so you got to train then to wiggle your ears, or if you're playing something that uses magic, you obviously Bewitched, you could wiggle your nose, and that'd be enough. So for those very old listeners out there remembering Bewitched. But it's just, I find it fascinating that people sit back and think, hey, why don't we look at your face and what happens with your face and move a mouse with that? And people would go, you're crazy, get back in your box. And some people go, you know what, I'm going to go and explore this further. And not everything develops into something we use on a daily basis, but I guarantee there are things we use now that some people laughed at when they first were suggested.
That's
and
right.
As time goes on, we go, hey, it's a really good idea.
It's just normal now. But, I'm just thinking about the concentrating face as well, and what sort of mess you make on the screen there once you start to really focus.
Yeah, that's right. Try and control your facial expressions would be a real challenge, I think, in this whole process.
Yeah. The trouble with moving engines forward is that motors, turbines and propellers, they're really energy inefficient. All that wasted energy and heat and sound. Imagine if you could propel yourself forward with light. In the stealth game of modern submarine technology, that's just what Chinese scientists are trying to do. Chinese submarines may be powered by lasers. Matt, I'm assuming they've cleared up all the pew-pew-pew business.
Well, if they're trying to be a stealthy submarine, you probably wouldn't want a lot of that going on. These involve laser pulses, 70,000 newtons of thrust. That's similar to what a commercial jet engine, a single engine, would produce, 70,000 newtons of thrust. That's pretty impressive.
That's
now,
a lot to get out of a laser.
It is out of a laser, but I actually think the exciting part here is not so much the laser pulse. That's pretty cool. And obviously, if you're trying to be stealthy, you don't want a propeller in the water spinning away there, because the hum or the beat of that can be picked up by someone trying to listen for that. What I think is really cool is they're also doing a bit of good old supercavitation. One of my favourite things to do. Of course, one of the problems...
Happens in your mouth a bit, doesn't it, if you haven't brushed your teeth? Is that right?
Probably does as well. Super cavities. So when you've got a submarine going through the water, you've got a lot of resistance from that good old-fashioned water. It's a fairly thick fluid for you to get through. We talk about surface area. A boat sitting on top of the water going along has got a certain amount of hull surface area, so that drags it a bit. But a submarine has got the whole thing surrounded by water, so surface area is increased, so you get a lot of drag. So putting a submarine through the water, even if you've got laser pulses, is still a hard job. But add some supercavitation in, effectively what that does is vaporizes the water around the submarine, so the submarine's not going along in water, it's almost going along in air.
In a bubble of air.
In a bubble of air. Now, with that and the laser pulses, the scientists working on this in China believe they can get to the point where they can go the speed of sound underwater.
No way.
That's fast. Now, we talked last week about the different speeds of sound depending on the altitude that you're at, so depending on how high you are. Or actually it was temperature, sorry. It changed obviously as height changed, but in temperature.
Yeah.
Speed of sound underwater is different again, obviously. But let's say, for round numbers, 1,200 kilometres an hour. That's fast for a submarine. That's pretty fast. Now, one of the challenges...
For anything,
that's right. One of the challenges they think they've got here is steering a submarine.
Yeah, because you're going to crash into stuff. There are some blue whales out there that are really hard to avoid.
And they wouldn't understand something travelling along at that speed. They know what speed other fish travel at, and they know what speed boats and things in the water travel at. Everything's going along at a fairly similar speed. Yeah. You're not getting things in the water naturally going at 1,200 kilometres an hour.
Well, anyone who's ever hit a kangaroo in the car going at 100 kilometres an hour is going to know what sort of peril this submarine captain has got to worry about.
Yeah, that's right. So it sounds quite fascinating. They're not there yet. They're obviously working on this. And submarines, I did wonder whether we get to the stage where submarines are so yesterday that we don't use them anymore. Warfare doesn't rely on submarines. We used to locate Canberra, capital city of Australia, inland to get away from it being invaded by
submarine attacks. Yeah,
that sort of thing. But we've got so many other ways to attack now. A submarine's still an important part, but I think they are still in terms of, well, hopefully not warfare, in terms of protection around the planet, around the globe. I think submarines are still important, and obviously China thinks they are because they're still developing submarines along these lines. US Navy's working on different stealth technologies as well, so they all want to be stealthy. But I don't know that anyone else is working on the speed in quite the same way as
That's amazing.
China. Yeah, it does sound fascinating. And we've talked before about something similar with ships to reduce their resistance by blowing bubbles, effectively, blowing bubbles outside the hull to reduce their air resistance. But if you could create a bit of supercavitation around a ship hull, you'd be able to reduce the air resistance or the water resistance quite dramatically as well.
I just think, so you're trying to be stealthy and you're not making any noise. But anyone that is above the surface looking down is going to see this glow tearing through the ocean.
It's tearing through, that's right. But it's going to be on you before you even realise. So.
That's right. Oh, goodness me. Well, maybe I can track them by satellites.
Maybe. Just see this bulge of water coming along.
Up the game here. And with that, pardon me, we are making like a shepherd and leaving. It's time to make like a tree and hit the frog and toad. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
My pleasure. I'm going to just go and check now how they do that survey for those 5 to 7-year-olds. I'm quite fascinated by that. So I'll catch my e-scooter down and check out the survey process there.
Well, I've got to do all my face exercises because I've got a date with Call of Duty this afternoon and I do not want to pull another muscle again. Thanks for tuning into Tech Talk once again, folks. And a special thank you to Michael Faraday, Heinrich Hertz and Nikola Tesla, among others, for sowing the seeds all those years ago to have led up to this point and enabled this nifty little podcast to be. I'm James Eddy, signing off for another week. As always, it's a pleasure to bring you a regular dose of Tech Talk, and we hope to catch you in another week's time when we'll deliver yet another glimpse of the possibilities that lie ahead. See you then.